To get to the system settings, click here on settings and the system settings option here. On the first tab, we have the options where we can basically stylize, change the style, or should I say the color of the admin interface and the login screen. We can also change the logo, which is shown in the login screen, and when there are no tabs open here in the administration, and as well as adding a custom image for the login screen background. On the second tab for localization, we have an option for putting a default language for the admin interface. Down here we have the options for the front-end languages. You can add new languages by just going here and you can start typing or selecting one of the options by clicking on the arrow here. If I would, for example, add a new language, let's say Croatian, I would need to click on save here, of course. And then on my objects, if your objects have localized fields, you would have a new tab for your newly added language. One more thing that you can do here is delete them, of course, and set another one to be your default language. If we go back here to the debug, we have an option of setting debug email addresses. What this does is if you're sending emails through Pimcore, you can add, let's say, john@doe.com, and all of the emails will go to the john@doe.com and not to the actual recipient that needs to receive this email. This only works, as I just explained, when the project is in development mode. In production, it does not work like I just explained. Now for the website, here you can set the main domain. In my case, my main domain would actually be this host, but let's say you're using Pimcore and you have multiple sites set up through Pimcore. You would set up your main site here. You can set the default error page. This is basically your fallback error page if you didn't put any error pages down here. If you wanted to add a custom error page for the English version of your site, after you created the document, you would just basically take it from here and drag and drop it. The same goes for any other languages that you have set up on your site. You can only get the error page when your site is not in development mode. And finally, down here we have the documents, data, objects, and assets. All of the three that I mentioned are completely the same when it comes to the options. Basically, what this does is it manipulates how many versions of a certain document, object, or asset you can have before they get deleted. So let's say I had a document, I saved it 11 times. In the versions, I'm only going to have 10 because 10 is the maximum number of versions I can have. You can change this number to as high as you wish, although I would not recommend going like above 50. One thing about the versions is that the versions are stored within the database and as well in files within the actual project. So if you put on a really high number, the files can get pretty hefty, pretty large. This really depends on the kind of server that you have. If you have a lot of space on your server, that's completely fine. You could, in theory, just delete this, and then you're not going to have a limit on how many versions of a certain document, object, or asset you can have. And also, as you just saw, if I deleted this, you can choose the other option where a certain version will only be available, or should I say stored, for a certain number of days, which you put in here. Hope the video helped you. And if you want to learn more about Pimcore, you can check out my Udemy course called Learning Pimcore from Zero to Hero, where I will show you all of the steps from creating a project, buying and setting up a server, as well as deploying your project. Hope to see you there.